All right, we are going to do the mirror lab. Basically what this lab is just testing out those rules of reflection that you've already written down in your notes. So the tools that I have, and you can do this at home if you have something similar to this. So I have my journal, you can see underneath. I have mirror, a mirror that will stand up straight on top of my journal. So you can use any mirror that you might have at home as long as you can get it to stand up straight. I have a ruler that has centimeters. I have some straight pins. I like to use the ones with the little knobs on top just because they're easier to pick up and down. But any sort of straight pin will work for that. I have a protractor. If you don't have a protractor at home, I'll show you how you can check your angles to make sure that they're equal. And then I have this piece of cardboard. And the piece of cardboard really is just to give some stability to the pins. I'm going to do the lab right here on my journal. And if you can see right in the middle of my page, I've just drawn a straight line straight across the middle of my page. That's going to be where we place our mirror. And we're going to be marking some things. We're going to just mark everything right here on the journal page. If you're doing it at home, you can perform your own experiment on your journal. If you're not doing this with your own materials, just follow along and copy my diagram as I do it. So like I said, the very first thing that I did was draw a line right across the middle. I'm going to put my cardboard underneath my paper. And I'm going to choose a spot right in the middle of my line. And I'm going to put a pin there. Right in the middle. And just stick it through the cardboard so that it's standing straight up. Now I'm going to label that in just a minute. Now I'm going to take my mirror and I'm going to put it flat against that line that I drew. So that's right up against where I put that pin. Now I'm going to take another pin, and this is what we're going to call the object pin. And I'm going to come back from the mirror about 10 lines or so, and I'm going to move over to the right so that I'm putting my second pin at an angle. And I'm going to just stick that again straight up and down. So now I have this pin right here that's called a mirror pin, and this one that is an object pin. Now what I want to do is to check and see those angles of reflection. My angle of incidence should equal my angle of reflection. So what I would want to do, if I get down and look at my mirror straight on, I can see a reflection of my object pin here. I can see a reflection of my mirror pin. But if I turn my whole journal as I'm looking in the mirror, I can see that those two reflections start to line up with each other. And I'm going to turn my journal and eyeball those two reflections until they're in kind of a straight line with each other. And I'm going to take my third pin and I want to place it off to the left to where when I'm looking at it, it's in line with those two images that I see in the mirror. So, right about there. Now I'm going to show you what I can see when I look in the mirror here. So when you look straight on in the mirror, here's my object pin reflection there. Here's the object pin. You can see the mirror pin, and here's the pin that I just placed. Now when I get down and look, see if I look off to the side, you can see those pins kind of start to line up. When you get just in the right place, it looks like they're all in a nice straight line. Now you're going to come back up here And watch while I mark the things in my journal here. So I'm going to move my mirror, and I'm going to grab my pen. As I take the pins out of my paper, I'm going to label what that pin was. So the first one I'm going to take out is this mirror pin. And I'm going to put a nice clear dot where that was, and I'm going to label it. Mirror. And I'm going to put number 1 because we're going to do this twice. Now over here, I'm going to put another dot, and we're going to call this object. Now I'm not going to label that number 1 because we're going to use the same spot for our second trial. Now over here, another dot. We're going to call this the eye, okay? Because that's where we put our eye to try and line it up. And we're going to go eye number 1. Now I'm going to take my cardboard out so I've got a nice smooth surface to write on. And I'm going to draw my lines in blue and purple. So I'm going to take my ruler and line up the object and the mirror pin, those dots that I just drew. And I'm going to just draw a nice straight line. I'm going to extend it all the way. And I'm going to draw an arrow here to show that this is the direction, if we could imagine a light ray going along that line. And now I'm going to come and draw another straight line from the mirror to the eye pin. Straight like that. And this time our arrow is going this way. Now the other piece that I'm missing here, that should look familiar from your notes, the surface, the incident ray, the reflected ray. The only thing I'm missing here is my normal line. So I'm going to use a green pen, lots of different colors so that we can really distinguish what's what. And I'm going to line my protractor up. If you don't have a protractor, eyeball it if you're using your own materials at home. And we're going to label that normal number 1. Now I want to go ahead and measure the angles here. So if you have a protractor, my suggestion is the 0 line on your protractor, put that on your normal line. And that way you're not having to subtract anything from 90. You're just reading this angle right here in between the normal and the ray. If you don't have a protractor at home, I'm going to show you how you can you're not going to get an exact measurement in terms of degrees, but you can measure and see if it's if the angle is pretty close or if it's a little bit off. So with a protractor, I'm going to line that up to where the 0 is on my normal. And I want to look at my angle of incidence. That's this blue line right here. And it's right at 40 degrees. So I'm going to label my angle, and that's 40 degrees. Now I know that my reflected angle should be the same, but I'm going to measure it and I'm going to just test it. So again, I put my 0 right on that normal line, line it up as best I can. And now we're looking at that purple line. And you can see it's about 41 and a half. So I'm a little bit off, not perfect, but it's pretty darn close. So again, I'm going to label that. we're going to say 41.5. And there's a couple different reasons why your angles might be just slightly off. If you don't have perfect eyesight, if you're nearsighted or farsighted, or if you have an astigmatism, which means that things get real fuzzy, that can affect it as well. My eyesight isn't great. It's not terrible, but it's not great. So sometimes I have a little bit of trouble focusing on things perfectly. So that sometimes affects when I'm trying to line things up in the mirror. So little things like if your surface is a little bit bumpy, or if you're moving your ruler off of the exact dot where you put the line, that can make a small difference as well. So there's all kinds of little things that you can't necessarily control that would affect your results there. But that's pretty close. 40 and 41.5 is a pretty decent result. So now we're going to do the second part, which is I'm going to take my mirror pin, that's this one right here, and I'm going to move it over to the left from where I had it before. So about, oh wait, I need to put my cardboard back in. Won't stick through the journal pages. Move it a little bit farther over, about the length of that first part of my finger. And I'm going to stick my mirror back on that line I drew, get it nice and close. Here's another thing that'll affect it. I can't get my mirror all the way up flush on that line. There we go. Okay, now, like I said before, we're going to put the object pin in the same spot. Oh shoot, I need to turn my cardboard just a little bit. There we go. So we're going to put the object pin in the exact same spot, right over here. And now I'm going to do the same thing I did before, which is to turn my whole journal and get down on the same level as your journal, as your mirror. I'm looking at both of those pins in the mirror, and I'm going to turn and turn and turn until both of those reflections are in an exact line. So now I'm going to take my other pin and I'm going to hold it right in front of my face and try and line it up with the ones that I see in the mirror. And that, I think, is about as close as I'm going to be able to get it today. So let's see how I did. Take your mirror off because you're done with that. You don't need it anymore. As you take the pins out of your paper, you're going to label them. So here we have mirror number 2. Over here is the object. You don't have to label that one again. And then here we have eye number 2. Okay, get my cardboard out of the way. Now for this set of lines, I want them to be really different, so I'm going to use red and orange to draw my lines in. I'm going to go on and put my normal in there first. This time, instead of going straight through this pin, I'm going to draw my normal straight through that other mirror pin right there, because that is the place where everything was sort of centered. So just nice straight line right here. Label that normal number 2. Use my red pen, and again, just a straight line from the object to the mirror pin. A little bit wider angle this time. Nice and long. So arrows that way. And now an orange. from the mirror to the eye pin. And this one is reflecting out that way. So now I'm going to measure my angles. Oh, I didn't show you how to do it without a protractor last time. All right, without a protractor, here's what you do. You take a piece of paper and you just set it right there. You set it to where you can see the normal and your incident ray. Okay, so I'm looking at the red line and this green line. Just make a mark on your paper. There's my normal. And here is where my incident ray hits. So now I want to move that piece of paper straight over to the left. And this mark that I made for my incident ray, I'm going to put that on the normal. And the other one should match up pretty close to the reflected ray. And if you look here, it actually does match up. So just to show you up close, I marked the normal and my incident ray. And then I just took that piece of paper and I slid it over to the left. So I've got my normal and almost perfect. Now we're going to measure it with the protractor just to see how close it was. And I'm not going to make you get seasick from looking at me moving the camera anymore. I'm just going to measure it and tell you. So my incident ray after I line up my protractor is right at 49 degrees. So I'm going to mark that as well. I'm going to put it in here, 49 degrees. Now I'm going to measure my reflected ray. Make sure my protractor is lined up nice and carefully. And my reflected ray actually is also right at 49 degrees. So I did way better the second time. 49 degrees. So we can see that law of reflection in action here. The incident angle and the reflected angle, they should be, if not exactly the same, they should be pretty darn close. Even just eyeballing it, it's still pretty close. Well, now I want to test that other concept from your notes, which is that the image appears the same distance behind the mirror as the object is in front of it. So if my mirror is here, here was my object. When I look into the mirror, the image looks like it's behind the mirror. So it should be about the same distance. How can we test that? What you do is you take these two reflected rays and you're going to extend them this way until they meet. And they should meet at that position of the image. So I'm going to use the same colors that I did before. So orange. And I'm going to just extend it back nice and far. Make it a dashed line so it's clearly different from the other one. And extend my purple line. Again, making it a dashed line just so it's a little different from the other one. And we're going to look at where they meet. Now, because my first angle was not quite perfect, that means that where the two rays intersect is not going to be quite perfect either. So, if I look at my paper, I see where those two lines cross, and it's right here. Well, I can already tell, here's my object, and here's where the two lines cross. I can already tell that this one's a little bit farther this way, and it looks like it's a little bit farther away from the mirror, but that's okay. I'm going to measure everything anyway, and just kind of see what we come up with. So the first thing I'm going to do is to take my ruler again. I'm not measuring anything yet. I'm just using it as a straight edge. And I'm going to use my protractor so I can make sure it's nice and square. No, I take that back. Use my ruler. Use anything straight. Just make sure it's as straight and square 90 degrees as you can get it. So I'm going to just draw a line from the object to the mirror. And I'm going to measure that line. Now I always want to measure in centimeters. So I move my pens out of the way. If I measure that line, that is 6.6 centimeters. 6.6 centimeters from the object to the mirror. Now the image should be about 6.6 centimeters on the other side. I can see that it's not. I want to see how far off I am. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw that line. Make it as straight as I can get it. And you can see here, it's a little bit too far off to the right. Now I'm going to measure it. And it's right at 8 centimeters. I'm going to say 8.0 centimeters. Now, if you wanted to get really fancy, you could even do a percent error. Okay, so in this case, you can say we do actual minus calculated or measured. So the real one minus the tested one. So we can do 6.6 centimeters minus 8.0 centimeters. And then we divide by the real one, 6.6 centimeters. Take that whole thing times 100. And when you do that, I get my trusty calculator out here. Okay, 6.6 minus 8.0 divided by 6.6 times 100. So negative 21.2% difference, which is not too bad for just eyeballing it. If we were to do this lab in class, I would have you do it in partners, and then one person would kind of place the pin and then the other person could check their work, and that way you've got two sets of eyes on it. Since I'm doing this by myself, I just have to rely on my own abilities to eyeball it, which clearly not quite perfect, but this is the stuff that you should have on your journal. If you did it with your own materials, your numbers might look a little bit different than mine, and that's okay. So once you finish this, go on to the next part of Canvas. It's just a really quick and easy quiz about the ideas of reflection in the mirror. So I hope that helped you visualize those rules about reflection. I really miss you guys, and hopefully I'll hear from you soon. Have a great day.